Well, as Hazel mentioned, Mark Spratt, I'm Chief Customer Officer with the Josh Bersin Company. I've spent 20 years in the space of HR, 12 years at Deloitte, leading a lot of global, HR transformations, and then 6 years at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I have worked in the Middle East. So from 2009 to 2010, I worked in Riyadh, leading a big transformation there for the kingdom. Also spent lots of time in India. I was there for 4 years, living in Mumbai, driving a lot of the work for Deloitte out of that region. All over Europe, North America. I'm based in Los Angeles, and as Hazel mentioned, it's 4 a.m., but I am an early riser, so I got up at 3 a.m. this morning, and I've already had my coffee, so I'm thrilled to be on today. And I'm going to walk you through how AI-powered consulting is really going to help you transform your organizations and really just optimize all the work that you're doing and save you a lot of time with really the valuable theory that the Josh Bersin Company has developed over the last 30 years. We've also curated quite a bit of very strong data providers that will provide a ton of value for you and your teams. So I'll spend the first 30 minutes really going through the agent and how powerful the agent is. I've built a couple of scenarios over the last couple of days that I thought might be very interesting for all of you, and they're based on projects that we're actually working on right now. And then I'll spend probably the second half of the call walking through Galileo Learn, which is an AI-powered learning platform, which really is just phenomenal. And I can't wait to walk you through some of the great features there. And AI isn't really replacing HR professionals. It's not replacing leaders. It's amplifying leaders. And I know the Josh Bersin Company, we've talked a lot about how AI is creating super workers, super managers, and super organizations. And it's shifting the balance, in terms of not spending a lot of time developing decks, developing materials, but really, coming up with real-time practical insights and practical business advice, that can drive you and your businesses. So I'll start with Galileo. And for folks who haven't seen the platform, this is the landing page and a little bit of background on how we landed on Galileo. For folks who know Josh Bersin and Bill Pelster, our co-founders, when ChatGPT came on the market almost 3 years ago, we were really intrigued with the technology. We were intrigued with the power that this could provide for the HR space. And we looked at a lot of the technologies that were out there. And we would notice that there was a lot of hallucination or drift that would happen in some of the tools that came on early on. And the benefit of working at the Josh Bersin Company is we're talking to lots of providers, lots of technology startups, and we found that Sana AI is probably one of the best in the market. Having looked at lots of other providers, and Sana provides that kind of backbone to Galileo and to Galileo Learn. It really controls for hallucination and drift, and I'll talk about that here in a second. What we love about this tool, and what a lot of our clients love about this tool, is you're within one tool, you're getting access to all of the world's leading LLMs. So I'll start here at the bottom of the landing page, and you'll see you can filter by whatever LLM you'd like to use as you're driving your search. I always like to go with Claude. I think it's probably, for us, it's probably one of the strongest. But if you have a preference around GPT or Gemini Pro, those are also fantastic LLMs, and it gives you the power to kind of choose the LLM that you'd like to search for or use when you're driving your search. The other thing that's really great about this is you can upload files, you can search the web, and when we're working with clients on using Galileo, some folks like to keep their web search off because they really want to keep this as a closed GPT that just focuses on our research. That reduces, the LLM going out and searching the web and maybe pulling something that might not be correct. So we try to keep that off. But for folks who are very seasoned, folks who are very deep in a certain topic and they want to have a broader search and open the aperture to do a broader search, they can search the web if they want to, and that's available there at the bottom. So what I did is I created a couple of scenarios that I thought would be very interesting for all of you. Being a former PwC consultant, I came up with a couple of scenarios, and this is a firm that we work with quite a bit. And I basically went in and I came up with a scenario that was very, very common for us when I was a consultant. And I'll walk through kind of the scenario here. So you're a major global consulting firm, and you're advising a bank, shifting from branches to digital channels. And the CEO of your client basically wants to know if they have the right strategy for their workforce over the next 5 years. So the prompt that I develop, and by the way, when you're developing prompts, this is not a Google search. So I encourage people really not to kind of just type in a sentence or type in a few words. The more information you give the LLM, and many of you are probably power users in AI know this already, but that kind of James Joyce stream of consciousness where you're kind of giving more context and providing more information, the more information I found, the better. So as I build up this prompt, you'll see this is a long prompt, but it actually really delivers back a really very pointed response from the LLM. So I've asked the LLM to evaluate our workforce against our 5-year strategy. What are the critical roles that we're missing for our bank? I want Galileo to show skill clusters. I want them to show the external labor market, pipeline risks. I want them to pull data from our embedded partners. So Heidrick and Struggles will highlight benchmarks on succession readiness. Lightcast will provide labor market signals for roles and skills that are most in demand. Oyster is another data partner that we use that really looks across cross-border and helps us understand any compliance risks. So if we're hiring for this bank, if we're hiring folks in Singapore, London, Los Angeles, it'll give us some of those differences from a labor employment perspective, and it has all of that data, which is very powerful. For Rejig, if you'd like to show the internal skills and the intelligence on kind of where the capabilities exist today, there's a lot of migration of skills. So where are those pockets of skills as we're creating a digital bank for this company, and where are the mobility opportunities, and what are those opportunities to redeploy folks in certain areas? SHL helps us assess candidates and employee potential using predictive performance data. And then from Vizier, we can integrate all of our workforce analytics by headcount trends, diversity benchmarks, attrition risk, any kind of pay equity information so that we can kind of work through those planning scenarios. And then finally, I'd like the LLM to synthesize all of this into some insights and narrative that the CEO can really make some quick decisions around. And I'd like to do that over the next year to 24 months. So you'll see I hit run, and it comes back with a comprehensive executive summary around how this bank is shifting into digital channels, and what's going to be required as they shift from a more traditional banking setting into a more digital setting. So you'll see some of the general technology and human skills that are needed. It's basically saying that the critical finding from Heidrick and Struggles is succession planning from a traditional perspective is not going to be sufficient. They really need to look to high-skilled talent-based pools, rather than replacement charts from Lightcast. The labor market data shows that over 30,000 skills are tracked globally, with banking required really specialization in cybersecurity, cloud architecture, AI capabilities. And what's also phenomenal about this is you can produce these graphics very quickly. For your executive team, if you're working with your executive team around a transformation, it produces all of these very, very powerful graphics very, very quickly for you as well. Oyster basically told us that that across 180 countries, the workforce is very distributed, and talent acquisition in these local markets can't supply the digital needs in those markets. So you'll have to kind of think globally and kind of look a little bit farther afield to kind of drive that transformation. There are mobility opportunities. So Rejig analyzes and reveals significant potential across internal redeployment. So this particular bank, has folks internally that they can redeploy through skills matching and career pathways. SHL covers that predictive performance insights are also very, very powerful. So this framework helps us enable and identify transformation-ready talent that can adapt into these digital-first roles. So if you're curious, not everyone is ready to make these big shifts in their careers, and this will help you kind of do a deep dive in that area. And then Vizier gives you that real-time analytics to show kind of where the dynamic workforce planning and skill demand is needed, rather than kind of these traditional headcount models. It also goes through for the CEO, what are their most critical and urgent bets over the next year to 24 months? So technology, skills are at a shortage, and it gives some of the statistics around that. The leadership pipeline is vulnerable, and you want to really think through kind of maybe mid-level leadership doesn't have the right succession behind them. So that's an area that the CEO should focus in on. Talent retention crisis. So how do you retain some of your best people? And you can kind of, especially in fintech for these larger banks, how do you make sure that the annual turnover rate is not too high, so they're retaining the best people as they go through this transformation. So you can see as we're going through this is very, very powerful for an executive to make very quick decisions around that transformation. There's also an action plan for the CHRO. So over the next 90 days, it's basically saying that the CHRO should really think through deploying an intelligence platform. And if you are interested in those intelligence platforms, you can actually uncover them in Galileo, and you can say, well, what are the best intelligence platforms that we should be looking at, and it'll help you score them. One thing that people really love about queries like this is the traceability. And you can see as it's giving you these responses, if I hover over the footnotes here on the bullets, you can see exactly where from our corpus of knowledge and our library of data and research, where it's taking these responses. So this is something that the LLM and the AI is not making an educated guess. It's not kind of hallucinating around these responses. It's actually based in research, and all that traceability is traced back to our library, which I think people really, really enjoy, and they love having that confidence that they know that whatever does come back from Galileo is based on our research, and it's based on some of these data partners that I mentioned. So you'll see this is a fairly robust assessment of what the CEO should be doing from a banking perspective. And then, I basically am curious, and for this particular project, and again, this was a project that we worked on with a client, what are other examples of very successful banks that have gone through this transformation already? And, I typed it in, and it comes back with DBS in Singapore and what they've done and what made them successful. At ING in the Netherlands, they had gone through the same kind of transformation, and it covers kind of what they did to kind of drive this digital transformation for their banks. Trailblazer banks versus traditional banks, and kind of what people have done differently. Neobanks and challenger banks, and things that they should be thinking about. Bank of America here in the US, and what are those success factors that made them successful as they digitize their workforce around the world. So you can see this is very, very powerful, and what would have taken weeks, if not months. This happened in just a course of minutes, if not hours. So, I think people are finding this very, very, very powerful as they're driving some of these conversations. And I'm not going to go through this, and I'm not going to drain the detail, but I will kind of highlight that it builds upon the scenario and builds upon the questions. So you'll see, over the next 24 months, what should the executive team be focused on? And it gives you a very detailed plan on the phases and kind of what's needed. It goes through kind of each of the major critical kind of performance indicators. How do you know you're successful during that phase, and what do you need to do to kind of progress forward as you're going down? And again, you'll see all these footnotes that highlight where in our corpus all these recommendations are being pulled from, which is extremely powerful for organizations as they're going through. So I'll scroll through the rest of this area, and you'll see also the investment, which I think people really enjoyed. So as I'm thinking through this 24-month transformation for my bank, what are some of the investments, and what's the cost range as I'm thinking through the business case for my executive team around the investments. So there's program initiatives, and there's people investments, and what as I'm budgeting for this, what should I be thinking about, and what should I be thinking about upgrading? So I think people found that very, very powerful, and they also give you some risks that you should be on the lookout for, as you're transforming your bank. So technology talent shortage and kind of where they should be looking, leadership pipeline gaps, cultural resistance and kind of how that might show up for their people, and then success measurements around all of that. So that's a very, very kind of powerful way to kind of think through it. It also develops great tables, so as they're going through this implementation timeline, it gives you the investment, per phase of timeline and the expected outcome at the end of each of these phases. And I have to say, as a former consultant, this is something that I would have had, probably several teams around the world helping this bank work through this. And you can see just as I've walked you through this in the last couple of minutes, what would have taken, several weeks and lots of, brain power from lots of consultants around the world. It's just very, very, it accelerated everything that you needed to do. And it creates that super worker experience, for you and your teams around a scenario like this. So I'll go on to the next scenario. I'll pause here just for a second if there's any questions on this particular scenario.
There are a couple of questions, Mark. So let me just raise a couple of those. One question was about how long it took you to write the prompt. And I know my experience in Galileo is I normally just ask it a question if I've asked everything I need to ask and it suggests. But do you use Galileo to help improve your prompt before you ask it to go to work?
That is a fantastic question. The answer is yes, absolutely. So as I'm ideating and kind of thinking about the project, sometimes I keep the you can talk to your AI, so I put it on speaker. And as I'm kind of interviewing a client or thinking through kind of what the business problem is that we're trying to solve, I'll speak into the AI and say, this is the business problem we're trying to solve. I'm working with the CEO for this bank that's trying to modernize and digitize over the next 2 years. Help me develop a very robust prompt that thinks through, all of the aspects that I need to be thinking about with the CEO over the next 2 years. And you'll see the prompt that I pasted in up there. It's fairly robust. I of course I tweaked it and it gave me kind of 80%, but it gives you that starting point in which you can build upon. So I encourage folks use the AI to kind of help with that prompt engineering because it'll speed along the process as well.
I think I answered Mariano's question, which is the partners that you mentioned, Vizia, SHL, Hydrick and Struggles, etc. They are all part of the platform, but can you just say it in your words? So they're not open source content. They are partners that you've secured that are part of Galileo.
That's also a great question. So we get that question a lot as well. When we were building this LLM for HR, we realized that the Bersin Company, we had 30 years of research and insights, but we didn't have deep depth in certain areas. So we wanted to curate this really kind of robust experience for HR professionals and people leaders. So we went to folks like Lightcast, which signals labor market trends and skills that are most in demand across the market. As I mentioned, we went to Oyster to look at that cross-border compliance and to really understand kind of in large geographies, what are the labor laws around the world. We didn't have that research readily available in the Josh Bersin Company, so we knew that Oyster had that information. SHL had all of that candidate and employee psychometric, predictive performance data on hiring and thinking through, attrition trends. Vizier really gave us that workforce analytics and headcount trends. So as people are thinking about pay equity and predictive planning for their workforce scenarios, we thought that Vizier had that really kind of robust information. So we are going to be adding new data partners all the time, but we thought right out of the gate for the first 2 years of this program, those were probably the most robust and most helpful in the market. But we're adding new data partners all the time. But that's a great question, and you get these automatically when you sign up for Galileo. They're just embedded in that solution, and there's not any secondary sign up. It's just part of the solution, and it's baked into the LLM there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. And one final question we've got now, and I'm going to encourage people to keep adding your questions in the chat, and I will make sure that they get asked or answered later, was a question about, Daniela asked a question about data security and when prompting is using real life company data. I think Sarah has answered that quite well from our team, but let's hear it from you as well.
That's a fantastic question. We really value trust, and your data is your data. We are not ingesting your data to train the LLM. I know a lot of people are worried about, are you using my data to train your own LLM? We're not. We're not looking over your shoulder, and there is no way for us to uncover, what Hazel might be looking for, or someone else in the team, or one of our clients might be looking for. There's no way for us to see your searches or your prompts. That really is your protected data. So when you sign up in Galileo, it's kind of like you have a walled garden that's yours, and you can upload your client information, you can upload your information, and all of that's protected. And we're not going to be, tracking your searches or kind of tracking kind of what you're doing in that system. It's really a protected area for you, where we want to make sure that you can feel confident that whatever you're running searches on is not being assessed or tracked in any way. So I think people really appreciate that. Great question.
I'll let you carry on with your presentation, and we'll come up with the other ones as they start coming in, Mark. So I know as people are coming into the session.
Fantastic. Great. Well, the next scenario that I built out, and I like to build these out, before I come to a session like this, just to really give you a sense of the power of this tool. And as I run into this other pre-built scenario, let me just scroll up to the top here. I will talk a little bit about the interface. So you'll see on the left-hand side of the interface, there's the ability to refresh if you want to kind of create a new chat. And I always encourage people, as you're coming up with a new question for Galileo, hit new chat or hit the logo Galileo, which resets the search window. Anything that you enter into the search window in a given session, it's going to pull everything from that session in its responses. So if you have a new business problem you're trying to solve, I always, tell folks and encourage folks to hit that new chat or hit that Galileo logo there at the top, which resets that search window, so it's a fresh session and it's not pulling from anything that you might have been searching on previous. The other thing that I will mention is if you are interested in any of our research, you can always hit search, and all of our research is in the entire 30-year research library is embedded in this tool. So if there's a particular research report that you'd like to do some more investigating on, you can pull that up in the search window. If you want to do a search within that document, there's the ability to search within that document, and I actually can pull that up here for a second if folks are interested. And I'll pull up employee experience. It's not coming up readily available, but I can filter by folders and agents. So there's an ability, if you wanted to filter by standard Galileo for managers, you can filter by various files that you've uploaded, web pages that you might upload, but all of our research is embedded here, and you can do a quick search in that document if you'd like to. And I'll come back to that here in a second if time allows, but I do want to get into some of these scenarios for folks and let people ask questions. So this scenario was more of a talent acquisition example. And essentially, I created I masked a client name, and I came up with a fictitious client name, but this was an actual client, and they were looking for cybersecurity capability within their organization. And I basically wanted to, let me just make sure I'm in the right one. I basically wanted them to review, evaluate, not only the skill clusters, but I wanted them to think through. Let me just kind of go back here. So basically, I asked them to look through the skill cluster analysis around cybersecurity. As I'm building I'm looking for a senior cloud and AI security lead, and this is for a company that's based in the Middle East. Again, I'm asking them to look through Lightcast and Oyster and Rejig to really surface some of those great, data sets to be able to help me analyze where these gaps might be in the market. So it goes through, cybersecurity architects, cybersecurity engineers, specific gaps for this Middle Eastern company. They're based in Dubai. And you can see it uncovers some of that same information around the operations in Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, Doha, Muscat, and uncovers kind of all of those shortages that might be available there and how this might be a global search that they might want to do for this particular skill set. So I'll scroll through just the assessment of the market, and I'll go into the most urgent risks for this particular client over the next year to 24 months. So it really it requires a global person that really has deep large language model and system model information around AI. Some of the risk mitigations that they should be thinking through are either reskilling some of their current engineers or aggressively recruiting an AI researcher or a hyperscaler from another market, and bring them into the Middle Eastern region. There are some compliance and knowledge gaps, that folks may think, in terms of data sovereignty laws that are kind of representative there in the Middle East, and they should be thinking through that as they're thinking through hiring or reskilling some of those folks. It is recommending that, if you are looking for this skill set, that you look, either into a Big Four advisory, or look through maybe other kind of talent pockets around the world. So it goes through some of those risk mitigations, the highest value opportunities as they're going into this cybersecurity talent marketplace. What it also does, which I thought was really powerful, and I'll scroll down as it kind of built out this response, is it gives you a selection criteria as you're thinking through the next 90 days. How do you select the best candidate? So it comes in with that systematic approach. So basically I said, now give me a job description based on everything that you've uncovered about the cybersecurity market in the Middle East. I'm also curious about salary bands. So what are the salary bands? What are the roles? What are the benefits for someone if I'm thinking through this role? And all of this data, by the way, is real time. It's updated on a daily basis within our system. So you can rest assured that it's very current data. So you'll see this is a job description that it developed for me around a senior cloud and data AI security lead. This is a fictitious client. We've changed the name of the company just to give you an example. It'll give you a little bit about the role, and then again you'll see kind of where it's pulling this from in our research. So it's giving a couple of quotes from our research on why this is an important role in a growing market. Some of the key responsibilities for the role, the technical architecture, capabilities that were needed. It'll also go through kind of thinking through, this is a senior role, so how do they partner across their business, the required qualifications, some of the behavioral competencies that we need for the role, their preferred expertise. And then it goes into the compensation and benefits packages for a role like this for the region. So you'll see kind of the base salary range in US dollars, as well as the currency there in Abu Dhabi, mid-range, for 12 to 15 years experience, for someone who's 15 to 18 years experienced, or 18 plus, some of the salary ranges for this very senior cybersecurity role, and then kind of the market positioning. It also gives information around targeted bonuses. So if you're looking for kind of some of the best talent that's available in the market, this is kind of pulled from those global trends. As well as kind of some of the relocation benefits for folks that are coming into region, family and education benefits. And all this is baked into a job description. And I'll scroll down to the bottom here, that you can actually copy and paste very, very quickly. So there's an ability to, if you wanted to copy this into a Word document and think through that, we can certainly do that. I also asked it as a follow-up question for the application process, walk me through both the recruitment process, but also the interview and selection process. So you'll see the initial screening, the technical and behavioral interviews, the executive assessment, for the first 90 days, the offer and negotiation. All that's here baked into that. And what would have taken, having worked on projects like this in the past, what would have taken, probably weeks, to kind of work with the client. You can do this, very, very quickly. You can see, we developed this as I walk through it. This was done maybe in a half an hour last night. And you'll see the bottom of the prompt. You can copy it. You can add it to different, you can share it across if you need to share it. And then I asked the AI, based on everything that I populated above, if you can update the behavioral questions. So I was curious just to really understand, how should I interview this candidate once I find a really strong candidate? So it goes through the selection criteria around multi-cloud architecture, cybersecurity frameworks, AI and machine learning security requirements, data governance, and then it helps me score. It comes up with a rubric around these technical masteries. So what if I were to encounter an expert candidate, what would they look like, or an advanced candidate, or someone who is just very proficient, or someone maybe who is developing, someone who might have insufficient skills? Like, what does that look like from a scoring perspective, and the criteria that people might need? And I'll scroll through that. And again, I'm going through this fairly quickly because I wanted to go into a couple of other scenarios. But you can see the power and the amount of data that it does provide you, which I think is incredibly, incredibly useful. And as I scroll down, it'll also give me not only the criteria for all these various kind of elements, it'll give me some of the questions that I should be asking and some of the evidence that I should be looking for as I'm interviewing someone. I'll scroll down to the next part of this. I loaded up 2 fictitious resumes and CVs of candidates. And I basically said, can you score these candidates for me and tell me, based on the requirements, based on the job description, and you can see some of the questions that are here, score these candidates and let me know, who are these candidates should I talk to? Is there one who's stronger than the other? So you can see the AI basically took the job description, it took the selection criteria, and it helped you assess, who those strong candidates are. And I'll scroll down here after I get through the assessment. So you see the assessment's very, very robust. Mm-hmm. So the first candidate, and this is a fictitious name, Eleanor James was the first candidate that came through. And, you can see it quickly scored her background, so her immediate strengths. There were some potential gaps that it noticed. And then I loaded up 2 other, Omar Al-Qaib, and then Ravi and Narayan. Again, these are fictitious characters and fictitious names. And it scored all 3 candidates against each other, so you can see the recommendations. So Dr. Eleanor James, of the 3 candidates, was the strongest. And it gives me reasons why, it kind of goes through and it kind of shows some of the evidence, some of the gaps, So you can see how incredibly powerful this is for selecting folks. What's also very interesting, and I'll scroll down, is you can see how it's scoring across the various areas. It recommends that we make an offer to Eleanor James. So I create an offer letter here at the bottom. And then what I think is really, really powerful, and this is how this ties into our learning platform, is I wanted it to create a 1-year onboarding for Eleanor. Eleanor, she's based in London. She's trained at Cambridge. She's a very seasoned engineer, but she hasn't worked in the Middle East very long. I mean, that was kind of the biggest gap. You can see that she scored very, very high on quite a few areas, but there was some gaps. And I thought that, from a learning perspective, it might, and you can see the scoring here. I mean, it comes up with really very powerful graphs. So you can quickly copy and put into PowerPoint documents or Word documents if you need to share this with your executive team. You can see the weightages that it provides around technical mastery, strategic leadership, team building, cultural fit. All of that's quickly scored and weighed. You can see the weightage here at the bottom. So the winner, as the AI recommends that we kind of make an offer to Eleanor James. And by the way, one thing that's also very powerful about this, and I didn't do it for this scenario, but there is the ability to record an interaction. So if you're interacting with a candidate over a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting, and you have that recording, you can upload that interview into this chat and basically say, assess the interview, based on all the criteria that I've entered, and the job description, from an interview perspective, who's the strongest candidate, and you can kind of load that in, and it'll quickly kind of give you some of that as well. So here's the offer of employment. So it created an offer letter, to Eleanor, and it goes through the reporting structure and the location where she's going to be working. It goes through kind of the role and the kind of things that she needs to be thinking about. But let me go down to the bottom here. It also goes through the salary bands and kind of how we came up with those KPIs. And I'll go quickly into the onboarding if people are curious about kind of the onboarding here. Scroll down to this is a very long offer letter. You can see it's very robust, which is fantastic.
I've got lots of questions as well coming in, Mark. Yeah. So I'll let you get to there, and because I also want to make sure we cover Learn before we get to our.
Absolutely. Yep.
And by the way, I did, while you're getting to the bottom of there, I did this recently, and I didn't know any of these lessons. The system was completely intuitive for me to be able to make it all work. And I did load my interviews, and it gave me feedback, even on my interviewing.
So you can see after it generated that, I agree. I mean, people are using this quite a bit and they love it. After I developed the offer letter, I said, now I'd love to understand what is that ideal onboarding or transition support that I can offer to Eleanor. And you can see there's pre-start activities. So the hope was that we want Eleanor to start March 1st. So you can see from December to January, there are all kinds of pre-start activities where she would meet with the CEO and CHRO and the board committee. She would take a tour of the headquarters and the innovation labs. She's taking on this new role. So it goes through all the specific, an ideal state scenario. Like if you really want to onboard someone correctly and you want to provide that kind of comprehensive onboarding to ensure success, these are some of the elements you might want to think about. So you can see week 2 and week 3, all the compliance and documentation that might be needed. She heads into the year end. What's some of those pre-onboarding preparation that she could be working on? And then it gets into, from January until March, what should she be working on? It breaks down, kind of week to week and kind of, day to day, really a schedule for her onboarding. What's really powerful about this is you can build out outlines for these sessions and just copy them and load them into Galileo Learn and create, a first draft or an early draft to all of these sessions. And you can blend some of our great content as well as some of the content that you might have around policies that might be helpful for folks, as they onboard, as they transition into a new role. So you can see the 90-day transition plan. Why join this company? Kind of a little bit of background on the company. What's also powerful is it gives you success criteria. So at the end of the year or after each phase, you can see kind of how we're going to be measuring the success of her onboarding program and what success metrics look like. So 90-day strategic plan, that she needs to present to the executive team. We've gone through kind of the 360 stakeholder feedback, at the end of her, probably 30 days or 90-day Mark, just getting feedback initially from the team as she takes on the new role. Security incidents, this is a very important cybersecurity role, so we want to make sure during her first year that there isn't any major security and incidents across. So I'll pause there. I know this, you can see how robust this is and how excited I am about it, but I will pause just to see if there's any questions.
There are a few questions that go back to some of the data questions, but I just want to jump forward to just make sure. There were a couple of questions like, how are data sources updated daily? And in this interviewing process, how do you help make sure the system avoids any bias?
So we do fine tune for bias. I mean, we try to make sure that, we have no, so when I was looking at these three candidates, you can see that it picked probably one of the most diverse candidates from, it's a woman from, from London. So it's not, there isn't any way. It's just really just looking at the criteria that we've set. So we came up with an ideal scenario around what are the elements of a cybersecurity leader, and then it doesn't apply weightage versus gender or ethnicity or background. It did call out that she hasn't worked in the region, and that might be a potential gap. But you can see it wasn't really there wasn't bias one way or the other. So we've tried to control for that. In terms of our data partners, as we're refreshing the system, like any other system, they're updated, and every time you log in, you're getting the latest version of the system that you're working in. That's just on the back end, those data sets are just automatically updated. So you're getting the most current. Okay. The other thing that I will mention, which was a very happy surprise to us when we launched this, 3 years ago, is whenever our research team or Josh publishes a podcast, publishes a new research report on a given topic, and we load it into Galileo, Galileo actually goes through the entire corpus and the entire library, and it takes that new piece of research and it updates the prior research. So our complete library is evergreen in a sense, because anything that's new that we're uploading, it takes that new piece of information. So it's not pulling research or recommendations from an old piece of research. You're actually getting the latest and greatest thinking all the time. The AI is kind of looking through the library and the catalog, and based on this new piece of research, it's updating that real time, which I think is incredibly powerful for folks.
Okay, I'm conscious we're 20 minutes left in our session. We can come back to some of the other questions, but some people are coming in a little bit later. Abdullah, the system is only pulling from Josh Bersin's company research and partner content. It isn't open source. But let's go and give us some Learn side of the Galileo Learn. You inferred to it there, Mark, where you went from, we could take that onboarding and create it into Learn so that everybody can see.
Absolutely. The last thing that I will mention before I move off into Learn is there's another prompt that I built here around learning. And we do work with quite a few learning executives and learning leaders around the world. And I think the holy grail of working with the Josh Bersin Company is Josh has always created maturity models around, probably every functional area of HR, but learning is probably the deepest. And one of the things that I was always asked as a consultant is, I love Josh's maturity model from a learning, and I'll pick learning as a learning example here. Where do I fall on this maturity scale as an organization? Am I a nascent learning organization, or am I leading edge? And we would always, that would be a big project, and we'd have to assess the organization, assess their technology, assess the team that they had on the ground. But the agent is able to do that very quickly. So you can see the 4 levels of maturity here. And it'll basically, if you give information to the agent, it'll ask you a series of questions. And by the way, I think it's set to something like 10 or 15 questions to give you that assessment. But if you want to set it to 50 questions or 100 questions, if you want it to be very robust, it can do that. And it takes you through that very, very quickly. And at the end, it'll tell you where you fall on the maturity scale. And I think this is extremely powerful. And a lot of our clients and users have loved being able to assess themselves from a maturity perspective. And I figured I would just mention that because we have developed several agents on several functional areas. So with that, I know folks are eager to get over to Galileo Learn. So I'll switch over and let me know if you can't see my screen. So this is the landing page for our Learn solution. And I have to say, it's very, very powerful. It's AI first. And what people love about it is it's tailored to you. So if you are if you're working in a banking setting, I'm just going to choose banking because we were using that scenario, and you have someone working in Singapore or in London, and they're taking one of our courses on AI leadership, the courses aren't going to be exactly the same. They really know who you are. And as you log in for the first time, you're going to tell the AI system a little bit about yourself. So it'll adjust and it'll adapt to you. This is the landing page that folks usually get. You'll see the various tiles that are featured, and it's giving me recommendations based on what it knows about me. So it knows I'm an executive at the Josh Bersin Company, and I might be interested in dynamic skilling or rise as a super manager, some of our pace setter research. It also tells me, who across the community are on the leaderboard. Jeannie is on my team, so I can see that Jeannie is already up on the leaderboard. If you have folks that you're working with, people like this community aspect, so they can see kind of where they are. There's also continuing certification hours. So if folks are certified in SHRM or HRCI and they want to get certification hours to keep their certifications current, all of our training is certified, and you can use that for those certifications that are there externally. I will mention, just as a plug, for 2026, we are coming up with our own global certification. So there'll be more coming in that regard. So there's a Bersin certification that we think is going to be very well respected in the market, that people can use to put on their CVs, to put on their LinkedIn profile, to be certified in these various areas. So I'll go to just a couple of other elements that I think are very, very interesting. You'll see at the top, this floating bubble is the super agent or the super tutor that people can ask any questions to. And I'll just open it, and you'll see that it opens. And say, for example, I have a meeting in 10 minutes with with my leader, and I pre-built this prompt, and I basically said, I have a meeting in 10 minutes with my HR leadership team, and I really want to understand what systemic HR is. And this notion of systemic HR is that HR is evolving and changing at a very rapid pace. And we're doing a lot of research in this area. What should I be thinking about if I'm trying to retool my HR team globally or retool the folks that I'm working with? What do I need to do to implement that? I'm not going to select the language for now, but I'll just run this search so you can see it. So it's just taking a second to run. It's pulling through. So this is basically in 2 minutes. It gives you kind of, just so you know, enough information to be able to have a conversation with your executive team. It goes through systemic HR as an operating model that's modern for HR. You'll see where it pulls all that research from our research library. Unlike other transformations, systemic HR is focused on problem solving, where HR professionals are more consultative. And these are things that they should consider. So as you're defining your operating model, this systemic model is much flatter. It's team-based. They swarm folks around certain problems. They reward cross-functional problem solving, where really innovation lies. It also adopts the 4R framework: recruiting, retention, reskilling, and redesign, which is something that Josh and our research team, after studying this for over 2 years, they came up with that model. It's also the notion of building a full stack HR professional. So very similar to the engineering field, where they have full stack engineers. We think a modern HR organization should have full stack HR professionals, people that really know a wide variety of topics across the HR domain. They might be deep in 1 or 2 areas, but really have that full stack and broad fluency and capability across a variety of areas. They operate like an internal consultant, and you can see kind of where the research this comes from. They're enabled with AI, so they know how to use AI. They're comfortable with AI, and they, basically one of the things that we recommend is, as you're moving to this model, expect that there's going to be pockets of folks that are going to jump right in. There might be unevenness across a team, where some folks might be not as comfortable jumping in right away, where other folks might be happy to jump in. So just expect, as you're implementing something like this, there might be some unevenness. And then for your meeting, and basically the tutor says, when you're talking to your executives, you might want to agree on piloting some of these elements. So what are the top 2 business problems that your company is facing? And you may want to spin up a cross-functional HR swarm to really dive into one of these 2, just to pilot this model. Identify any gaps in your team, or in your cohort, or on business acumen or analytics, and you can target an upskilling plan. And by the way, Galileo Learn, you can create those upskilling plans for your teams as you're going through this. And it also recommends that you nominate 1 to 2 change champions for this area. So if you have 1 or 2 really strong folks across your team that seem to be embracing this new model, have them be a champion around this pilot. And you'll see that it developed it very, very quickly, but also it has recommendation as follow-up questions as you're preparing for this meeting. Also, if you're multilingual or you have a team that's multilingual, I can say, give me this response in French. And by the way, there's over 150 languages, that are baked in here. So, I just picked French. And my French is a little bit rusty, but I think this is a very strong translation. And also, if you're, say, for example, if you're commuting to work and you wanted to hear Josh, if you prefer podcasts, you can actually listen to this. So there's an ability to just kind of open some of the tools, and you can listen to this as you're on your commute or kind of driving in if you're preparing for a meeting. So let me pause there if anyone has any questions on the AI tutor.
I don't know whether it's directly on the AI tutor, Mark, but one of the questions was, if you're an HR team and you've got all your HR partners, your team members on here, does HR get to see the search queries from within their employee closed group?
So that's a great question. Actually, I couldn't have set that up better. I actually have my team in here. So the answer is yes, and. So anything that I've assigned my team, I can see their completion rate. But like I said at the beginning of the call, we wanted to create an environment that had kind of high trust. So folks can go in and explore and kind of take their own learning at their own pace. And I wouldn't be able to see, what my team is searching for or kind of what kind of training they're taking on their own. But anything that I do assign them that's more formal training, I can see that very quickly. And this is just an example of me running a report on my team. And this is actual data on who's, and so I had an intro to Galileo Learn, an intro to Create, searching in Galileo. So I can see who on my team, there are some folks that are better than others, but it's a very, very strong and robust way that you can report. And by the way, you can generate your own reports. It's very customizable, as you're thinking through some of this. But great question.
We've got Matt with his hand up, seeing as he's the Director of Learning Technology here. I'll let him speak. Please put your questions in the session, in the chat. Yeah, go Matt.
So this, I just wanted to build on some of the things that I've seen early in the Middle East when it comes to the AI tutor. Because one of the opportunities with the nature of the way Galileo is built and the opportunity of agentic content creation is the ability to splice and evolve content that's been world-class and built with Josh Bersin Academy with your own things like your own core values, your own strategy, your own unique context of going, how might these things evolve? And so being able to weave in world-class research and world-class insights with your own personal context and then talk to that via the tutor. And so having that versatility of going, okay, I can speak to the agent on one hand where I just want to look at the core research. I just want to understand what's going on in the market and the latest trends, as well as the versatility to bring that into your own organization and have a very similar coach, but around that core content in a learning-based context.
Matt, thank you for raising that. That actually is a great segue to the next topic that I think is also extremely powerful, is the ability to create your own content. So you'll see in the window here on the left, there's this create button. And as Matt correctly mentioned, you can pull in anything from our corpus, all of our research. You can also blend this with your own policies or your own procedures. So I went ahead and I created a course just early on because I knew it would take time to build. So we published a report probably about a month ago around the L&D revolution in the Middle East. I went ahead and I uploaded this report into that Create tool, and you'll see that very, very quickly based on that PDF of research, it created a full course with introductions and there's you can actually you can see it's very interactive. How ready is your organization to adopt an AI first learning? I'm exploring options, so you can kind of click on that. If you're also interested in kind of what this is or why this is important, there's also an avatar, and I'll just hit play for a second so you can hear kind of the.
Bit of a lag. We're not able to hear clearly.
Oh, yeah. So sorry for that. There might be a little bit of a lag there just with the Wi-Fi, but I will assure you that all of this was developed very, very quickly, and I selected the actor. But there's a whole range of avatars you can select. It also can do it in a variety of languages. So if you wanted to do this in Arabic or French or Chinese, you can choose any of those languages, and it'll quickly create that in the language of your choosing. So you can see, based on the PDF that I loaded, it creates a very robust course. Certainly I can edit the course and I can edit some of the interactivity, but it comes up with that probably 80% of what's really, really powerful. What also I was going to mention, and these are some of the case studies that it has in the research, there's also reflections. So if you're going through this course with a cohort of people, so say, for example, folks who wanted to develop their HR team, you can certainly enter your reflection as you're going through the course, and you can see some of your colleagues' reflections as well. So it creates that kind of semi-asynchronous experience where you're kind of going through with a cohort or a group of people kind of on this topic. I also will mention that this is just one of our research reports, but as I mentioned earlier, if you have, say for example, one of your direct reports, they're working on a certain skill that they're trying to develop, and you have a recording of that interaction. Like say you're doing your quarterly or your annual performance review, and maybe they're strong in 90% of these areas of their job, but they may have one gap or a 10% area that they need to really grow. You can actually take that video where you're having the conversation on where they need to grow. You can upload it into the agent and say, assess this video, very similar to what I started at the beginning of the call. Assess this video, give me some of the specific areas of where they can grow and develop. You can take the output of all of that, paste that into a Word document, and then upload it into Learn, and it can give you a semi-fleshed out course for that person. And you can upload some of our content. You can blend it with your own content, which is extremely, extremely powerful. And you can give your direct report a very tailored kind of experience for development. I'll pause there because I'm mindful that we have about 4 minutes left. And I know I've gone through all this very, very quickly. Are there any questions, Hazel? Because I just can't see the chat window or Matt that people would like to ask.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see what Matt has actually answered on some of those. Do your data partners offer research that covers different industries? So are they fairly specific? You can say, I want to know more about retail or hospitality or other areas like that.
Absolutely. So I just gave you a banking example, and all. But you can type in. Every industry is represented. These are global data sets around every sector and industry, as well as region, which is very, very powerful.
Okay, fantastic, guys. L&D community of the Middle East, stick your questions into the chat, or feel free if you want to jump off mute for those people that I've seen writing numerous notes. Debbie Sinister. I've been watching. Big Brother is watching you. Thank you for keeping your camera on. Everybody else, I don't know what they're doing. But we've got some more questions coming in through here. Thank you. People are posting some of the contact. Matt's answering the questions ahead of the curve.
Furiously working on it, H. I'm big in an AJ.
Thank you very much. You're going through the questions and answering. So the gentleman that asked who are all the partners, that's actually now posted in the chat as well. The QR code is in the chat. We are going fast and furious with the guys from the Josh Bersin Company because I think Galileo is such a game changer. I actually didn't know, I hadn't been through your demo, Mark, where it showed you to do everything for the hiring of a role. But I instinctively just did. And Galileo kept asking me questions and I kept saying, that's a good idea. I'll load this. It knew what top grading is because it's our preference as a way of doing something. And so it was just very, very dynamic and very interesting to keep being a partner for me as I went through this process and just keep going back in and adding. And I think the summary for me was Galileo doesn't guess. If it couldn't give me an answer, it didn't give me an answer.
That's right.
Now, it's not going to make the decision. That will still be my responsibility, but I feel like I've got, you know, a very informed HR professional on my shoulder giving me some support.
Absolutely. You know, and as folks, you know, get under the covers with the system and I start kicking the tires, if you have any questions or if you'd like me or someone from my team, certainly, you know, someone from Hazel and Matt's team to join, we are happy to take you through a more in-depth demo or activation session. You know, I know that as the top of the call, we said that it's early in the morning for me, but I am an early riser, so I'm happy to hop on the phone if people do have questions or if they'd like a more specific demo for their company. I really enjoyed the time today, and I, you know, thank you again for inviting me. You know, and hopefully, you know, if you haven't gone on the system, hopefully, you know, this prompted some of your interest, you know, to kind of go in and kick the tires yourselves. Please do ask as many questions as you can, and try to really stump the AI. To Hazel's point, you know, it will not give you an answer or try to make something up on the fly. You know, if it doesn't know it, it will say, I don't know the answer to that question. So simply play with the system, and you know, if you have any other questions, we're here to support you.
One final thought from me. Remember what time of year, guys. It is November. Learning strategies are probably being in, budgets have been put in. One of the things I've seen myself and seen the power of it a couple of times now is people uploading their learning strategy for 2026 and go, have I missed anything? That final sense check of going, look, I need an experienced researcher, Josh Bersin, to assess my learning strategy. When do you ever get to say that? And it's brilliant.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Vinod, thanks so much. Nadia, lovely to see you. Mark, thank you so much for jumping on so early, having the coffee, taking us on a whistle-stop tour. I think what I've learned is I need to make sure we separate out, although they're now bundled together, when you buy Galileo, like a deep dive onto Learn, there's definitely more than 30 minutes of information, and a deep dive onto Agent, so that we can get everybody up to speed. But it's been fascinating to respond to the inquiries that we have. So thank you so much.
Happy to do it. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, Mark.
Have a great day
And
ahead.
enjoy the rest of your day.